Hi, you guys. All right, so we are on book two. Oh, I just lost my gosh. All right, we're almost there. Book two, Reconstruction. So let's see what happens to Miss Jane. So again, she's a little older. So this is book two. And the first chapter is A Flicker of Light and Again Darkness. For a while, it looked like everything was going to be good for us. We had a little school on the place, the first cabin on your left when you came in the quarters. All the small children went to school in the day. The big children and the grown people who had to go in the field went to school at night. The teacher was a young colored man from the north, a good-looking, brown-skinned man, very good manners. The grown people, just like the children, all loved him. One day a week, we had a special teacher's day when he went to somebody's house and took dinner with them. Everybody tried to outdo everybody else. I didn't have a chair in my house. The bench wasn't good enough for the teacher to sit on it. So I sent Ned out to borrow me a chair. When he got back with the chair, I sent him out to borrow a fork and a plate. I got the fork and plate from the woman who worked at the big house. She told Ned to tell me, "Don't be surprised if the teacher recognized them. Everybody else in the place had borrowed the same fork and that same plate before." Well, if he recognized them, his manners kept him from saying he did. I didn't eat with him and Ned. I was too ashamed to do so. I pretended I had some work to do, but all the time he was eating, I was looking at him to see how he liked the food. Turn the page. After they got through eating, he asked Ned if he wanted to read something for me. He got the book out of his pocket, the only book they had at school, and Ned had to stand beside him. And while he pointed to the words, Ned spoke them out. I stood there listening and smiling. Before then, I doubt if I'd ever looked at Ned like he was my own. I had always looked at him like he was a little boy that needed me. But listening to him read, I knowed if it wasn't for me, Ned wouldn't be here now. And I felt I hadn't just kept Ned from getting killed. I felt like I had born him out of my own body. After he went to bed that night, me and the teacher sat by the fire hearth. That's just a fireplace. And we were talking. He asked me why I didn't come to school like the rest of the people. I told him when I came out the field at night, I was tired. And long as Ned was getting learning, I was satisfied. We talked and talked. He had very good manners, and everybody liked him, especially the ladies. I liked him too, and I went to school a couple times just to be near him. But I told myself I had no business thinking about somebody like that, and after I'd gone there maybe 3 times, I didn't go anymore. Then they had the colored politicians. They used to come to the big house to hold meetings with Bone. They would come to the house once, maybe twice a week, stay a couple hours, and then leave. If they had anything important to tell us, they would gather us at the school. This was church, too. Schoolie and church, same cabin. Most of the talk was about the federal government, especially the Republican Party. It was the Republicans that had freed us. And it was the Republicans that had the Freedom Bureau there to look after us. They wanted us to take interest in what was going on. They wanted us to vote and vote Republican. The Democratic Party was for slavery, they said. And believe it or not, they said there was in the Democratic Party too. You could always spot him, they said, because he had a white mouth and a tail. They told us they was going to take us to Alexandria one day so we could see a Democrat at work. The day came, they sent some colored troops to the plantation to bring us to town. The town square was full of people, white people and colored people. It was hot that day. People just standing there sweating and fanning. On the platform, the people was giving their speeches, one after another, white and colored. Every now and then, somebody would holler and call somebody else a damn liar. Then the troops would have to step in to keep them apart. When a Democrat got up on the platform, somebody hollered, "Pull his pants down, let's see his tail." We'd already seen his white mouth. The Democrat said, "I'd rather be a Democrat with a tail than a Republican that ain't had no brains." The people on the Democratic side laughed and clapped. The Democrats talked a while, then the Republicans got up there and talked. The Democrats wanted the Yankees to go out so we could build on our own. The Republicans wanted the Yankees to stay. The Democrats said we wouldn't have peace till the Yankees had gone. The Republicans said we didn't have peace before they came there. The Republicans said every free man ought to have 40 acres and a mule. The Democrats said that was strange coming from a Republican when a dirty scalawag had one of the biggest plantations in the parish. The Republicans said Bone had the plantation there to give people work who couldn't go out and get work on their own. Let me back up. So 40 acres and a mule. The idea behind that was that if you gave every freed black man 40 acres of land and a mule, he could till the land and grow his own food and be his own boss. And so Spike Lee has a company, his production company is called 40 Acres and a Mule. And so you should see that connection there. The other thing is the word parish. So many of you might know parish as like a Catholic church. In Haverhill, we actually have one area of Haverhill called a parish. A parish can be like a city or a section of a city. Okay, and it's a phrase that's used a lot in Louisiana. All right, it was burning up, right, because it was hot that day. The square was packed, the arguing going on and on and on. Then somebody hauled back and hit somebody, and what he did that for looked like everybody was waiting for that one lick. So remember, a lick is like a hit, okay? When you say, like, I licked him good, you didn't really lick him. You hit him, you beat him, and you won, okay? I grabbed Ned and dragged him under the platform. So platform is just kind of talking like a stage almost. And so they ran underneath. I had to fight my way under there because everybody who wasn't fighting on top of the platform or around the platform was trying to get under there just like I was. The fighting went on and on and on. Under the platform was burning up. Nobody moved. Turn the page 70. Then, after about an hour, the troops got everybody quieted down. They took the troublemakers to jail and brought the rest of us back home. We heard later it was the secret groups that had caused the trouble. Names like the Ku Klux Klans, the White Brotherhood, the Camellias of Louisiana. Groups like that rode all over the state, beating and killing. Would kill any black man who tried to stand up and would kill any white man who tried to help him. Just after the war, many colored people tried to go out and start their own little farms. The secret groups would come out there and beat them just because their crops was cleaner than the white man's crops. Another time, they would beat a man because he had some grass in his crop. "What you growing here, Hawk?" they would ask him. "Corn, master," Hawk would say. "That look like grass out there to me, Hawk," they would say. "Well, maybe a little, master," Hawk would say, "but before day in the morning, I surely get it out, if the Lord spare." "No, you better start right now, Hawk," they would say. Then they would make you get down on your hands and knees and eat grass till you got sick. If they didn't get enough fun out of watching you throw up, they would tie you to a fence post or to a tree and beat you. "Tomorrow night we come back again, Hawk," they would say. "You better not have no grass out there, you hear? Or, tomorrow night we come back and better have that grass in that field, hear, Charlie?" They was just after destroying any colored who tried to make it on his own. They didn't care what excuse they used. But we seldom had trouble with the secret groups. Bone was important in the Republican Party, and he always had soldiers out there guarding his place. Every time the colored politicians came, they brought guards and stationed them at the gate and along the road. A mile or two away, we would hear that somebody had gotten beaten up or killed, but we knowed it could never happen where we lived. People used to say, "Where y'all from?" We used to say with our heads high, "Mr. Bone Place." The people would say, "I hear that's a good place. They need any more people to work?" Sometimes we said yes, other times we would just say no. Then one evening, right after we had come in from the field, Bone called us to the house. It was dark when we came in the yard, and Bone was standing on the gallery with two people holding lanterns on both sides of him. He said he didn't own the place no more. The Sekish did. We had heard that the Sekish was fighting for their land. We had even heard in places where they got it back, but we never thought it would happen where we was. We had soldiers there all the time, colored politicians there all the time. How could the Sekish get the land? What was the soldiers for? What was the politicians for? What did they fight a war for if not to set us free? Bone said yes, they had fought a war to set us free, but now they wanted to bring this country back together. They had to get it together no matter what. He said till that was done, the Sekish was going to beat and kill. We asked how come they couldn't send more troops in. He said the Yankees was already tired of fighting for us. Some of them were sorry they had ever gone to war. Besides that, the Yankees saw a chance to make money in the South now. The South needed money to get on her feet, and the Yankees had the money to lend, and that was the deal. The Sekish got their land, but the Yankees lent the money. After he had paid us off, he went down to the schoolhouse to talk. Some was for leaving, some was for staying. But go where? We asked. Before we knowed what we had to do, we had to leave the place where we was slaves. But where do we go now when Bone done already told us Yankees don't care either? Let's stick it out, some of us said. We're not slaves no more. If we don't like it, we can always move. We dismissed the meeting around midnight and went home. Half the people left anyhow, but this time I was one of the ones who stayed behind. A couple days later, the owner showed up. Bone had gone. The teacher and all the colored troops and colored politicians had gone. A few people left in the quarters went up to the house to hear what the owner had to say. He was standing on the gallery in almost the same place where Bone had stood a couple days before. Tall, slim, narrow-faced man, still had on his Sekish uniform, even with the sable hanging on the side. His name, he said, was Colonel Eugene I. Dye, D-Y-E. I hope I don't have no more soldiers and no more politicians here, he said. He looked over the few of us left there. That schoolhouse up there going to be shut down till I can find you all a competent teacher. He looked us over again to see what we had to say. Wages still the same, 15 for the men, 10 for the women. Can't pay you all till the end of the year, but you can draw rations and clothing from the store. If that suits you, stay. If it don't, catch up with the coattail flying scalawag and the rest of them hot-footin' who were here 2 days ago. If Colonel Dye had told me that a week before, I would have turned around then and left. But after what Bone had told us, I had no more faith in heading north than I had staying south. I would stay right here and do what I could for me and Ned. If I heard of a place where I could live better, where Ned could get a better learning, I would go there to live. Till then, I would stay where I was. It was slavery again, all right. No such thing as colored troops, colored politicians, or a colored teacher anywhere near this place. The only teacher to come here was white. The only time he came was in the winter, when the weather was so bad the children couldn't go in the field. You didn't need a pass to leave the place like you did in slavery time, but you had to give Colonel Dye's name if the secret group stopped you on the road. Just because the Yankee troops and the Freedom Bureau had gone didn't mean they had stopped riding. They rode and killed more than ever now. Colored people wrote letters to Washington. Sometimes a group would get up enough nerve to go there in person, but the troops never did come back. Yankee business came in, yeah. Yankee money came in to help the South back on her feet, yeah. But no Yankee troops. We was left there to root hog or die. So in this chapter, there's quite a few things. Ernest Gaines is really good at putting all of the information in there. All of this is historically correct, okay? So you can check with your history teachers on this. So she's on Bone's plantation. Things are good. And they get a school teacher, and Ned is learning, all the other children are learning. And she tells us about the colored politicians and, what they're doing to help. And then all of a sudden, through public talks in Washington, um, they pulled everybody from the North out, and they gave the plantations back to the original owners. So Colonel Dye owned the plantation Bone was on. And Colonel Dye's being fair. Like, he's not a bad plantation owner. Women didn't get equal rights back then. And so the fact that they're making less than the men makes sense. That's the time period. The secret groups, the KKK, the Camellias Louisiana, the white something, hold on, White Brotherhood. Those are all white supremacist groups. And so any chance they had, they could be very difficult and tough on the blacks. And we're going to actually see that when it comes to Ned. So the reason why she names it A Flicker of Light, and again, darkness, is because, or I should say Ernest Gaines, is because things were good, right? It felt positive for blacks. Like, you could be a politician, you could be a teacher. Like, there's a lot of hope there for freed black slaves. And the hope is that things are going to get better. And then all of a sudden the North pulls out, and it's dark again. Those feelings of having rights is kind of gone now, right? So a white teacher as opposed to a black teacher, white politicians. And so a white politician or a white teacher may not really be able to identify with a freed black slave as much as a black teacher or a black politician. So she was more hopeful that things were going to get better. And then Colonel Dye takes over, and clearly things have not gotten better. So our next, before I tell you our next chapter, so journaling, there's a lot of things you can journal about. You can take it from Jane's point of view. You could journal, how do you think Jane's really feeling? Show the contrast between white and black, and show that you understood what the title actually means to this chapter. You could talk about the difference in pay, right? So the fact that there is not women's rights. You could write about that. You could write about how there was pay inequality during this time. And in some, like in the construction field, there's still pay inequality between men and women. So you could write about that too. Our next chapter is Exodus. And if you don't know anything about the Old Testament, there's a book in the Bible called Exodus. And Exodus, if you look at the word exit, so Exodus means to leave. And so that's what our next chapter is about.